Hello, hello. Test 1, 2. Who's here today? Let's see here. Am I streaming? I think so. Welcome to the Q&A today. It's Wednesday. It is August 28th. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. It's another time wherever you're at. Let me know who's here with the chat box. I'll remind you guys if you actually. Let me make sure we're going here. Okay, so whoever's here, as always, leave me a comment. Let me know who's here, where you're from. Well, I know where most of you are from at this point. I forget, but let me know who's here, and start putting some questions in the box. Hey, Peter, good to see you here. So I am going to show you guys something new today. Well, nothing. It's a project. I'm going to show you a project I've been working on. Hey, Tom. Good to have you here, Tom. For those of you that don't know, on the feed here, let's see, are we still streaming okay? I'm having like internet issues. Been having some internet issues for a while now. Hopefully it's still coming through. Let me double check something here. That's crazy. The phone service doesn't work down here, and the internet is very hit and miss lately. I don't know what's going on with AT&T, but that's who I'm using, and it's not awesome. So leave me a comment. My internet has cut out. I don't know if I'm still streaming. I cannot see any comments. Essentially, if you are new to these live Q&As, the thing you need to do is you need to click the button to there. I think I just picked back up again. Hey, Phil. Good to see you here. So I don't know what cut out and what didn't. I'm having some internet issues down here in South Florida. I don't know if it's related to the hurricane, but no phone service and very little internet service coming through. Hopefully it's working for you guys. I'm even hardwired in, so it's really bizarre. I'm going to go ahead and I'm recording this just in case it doesn't come through. Apologize for any technical difficulties. If you are new to the Q&A or the live critiques, you have to click the YouTube button, and once you click it, it's going to pop you out into a chat box that you can then chat away. So I don't know what's going on with this stuff. Hey, Simon, good to see you. So guys, let me know in the comments if this is cutting in and out or if it's just streaming straight through to you, because what I see is cutting in and out, but it may be my internet on the download side. My upload may be going good. So leave me a comment. Let me know if this is streaming okay for you guys or if it's cutting in and out. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I know that AT&T has a tower out. Streaming well. Okay, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. I'm down here in South Florida, and there's some AT&T issues going on with I have no cell phone service and very little internet, so it's awesome. Thanks, AT&T. Tom G, yeah, fine for me. Thank you. Seems okay. So now stuff's starting to come back through again. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys leaving some comments there. So just so you guys know, this is a Q&A session again, and we do these for the most part every other week, which it's great to see Simon here. Simon's been around for over a year in Stylecraft. And Simon, I'm curious how far into, I haven't seen your assignments for a while. I'm curious how far into Stylecraft you are. I know sometimes you guys get behind, and that's cool. And but Simon's been here for a long time. He's a veteran. Peter says, streaming good. Awesome. Thank you, Peter. So anyways, this is a Q&A session. Next week and back to Q&As, we're going to try and do these about every other week until, if you guys start dropping off and no one's at the Q&As, then obviously I'll reduce the amount of Q&As we do. But for now, it's every other week. And live critique sessions happen every 5th week. So that means like when you're going through Stylecraft through the actual course, you're going to see next week it's going to pop up and it's going to say, "Hey, we have a Stylecraft live critique call this week." That's your essentially your work is to show up to that live critique, and it's also a chance for you to catch up if you get behind. Because I know a lot of you guys are already falling behind on assignments. Yep, see, Simon has been here for over a year and he's falling behind on his assignments. But he's being honest, and I appreciate it, Simon. But as you know, you can submit assignments at any time, and I will critique those in the live calls. You don't have to stay up week by week. So try and make it very flexible for you guys in that regard. So we will have a live critique call next week. And then because we're doing every other week for Q&As, there'll be another call the following week. So we actually have 3 calls 3 weeks in a row right now. So this is week 1. Next week is a live critique. And for the newbies here, you're going to see how I do that. I don't really answer a lot of questions on those calls. I typically just go through critiques, and it takes at least an hour usually to get through those critiques. So you get to see everyone's work and how I critique it. And it helps you improve on your work, and it helps them improve, and yeah, so on and so forth. So anyway, so we're doing Q&As today. So if you guys have questions, I want you to please put your questions in the chat box. What I'm going to do a little differently today, while you're putting questions in there, is I'm going to show you a project that was submitted by Jags. And Jags, John Jags Nee is his full name. Jags is his nickname, I guess. But Jags did a project for texture. And I asked him to send me the project file so that I could show him kind of what I would do. So I'm actually going to jump over to that project file here. Hang on just a second. So you should be seeing on my screen, I think I'm up here in the box. So this is a project that I'm going to drop the resolution down here because it does take a while to render it. If it's a quarter res, does it still look presentable? I mean, it doesn't look super great, but actually I'm not going to render this because it's going to take too long. So we'll keep it here on frame 6. But this is the project that Jags sent in. And you may have seen this project. If you haven't seen it, go to I think it's his work in progress stuff, or maybe in the finished exercises. I can't remember. I think it's in work in progress. But anyways, it's a project that I think he was working for a client or a buddy of his or something along those lines. And he decided to incorporate this project into the texture assignment. Now, the texture assignment, if you're caught up, or if you're a veteran of Stylecraft like Simon is, the texture assignment has actually changed, Simon. So what I gave you guys was 2 pieces of footage and gave you some examples and asked you to texturize the footage. I always look forward to seeing those come back to me. Some of you follow along with that. Some of you will kind of step in and do your own thing, which is totally cool too. And that's what Jags did. So he kind of just was trying to balance his time for the week, and he had a client project. So he thought, well, how about if I add texture to this project and maybe I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's what he did. So I saw the project, and I mean, it's a great job. He did a nice job. It's rendering so slowly because it's a Cinema 4D render. If you look up here in the top right, which I may be covering this actually, but under the renderer, you all know this, or you should, if you've watched the 3D layer techniques video. You can change the renderers up here, and by default, After Effects always defaults to the classic renderer. And that's just doing like basic 3D. It's basically 2.5D, right? Where we work with flat layers in 3D space, and we do 2.5D work. You move up to the ray trace renderer, which is becoming obsolete. I think Adobe is phasing it out. It's there, and there's also the Cinema 4D renderer, which I've talked about. In fact, I think I talked about it in the last Q&A call. Someone had a question about something, and I showed it. When you use the Cinema 4D renderer inside of After Effects, it takes away a lot of features of After Effects. Things like transfer modes can't be used. Certain effects, I believe, can't be used. You can't use like collapse transformations. Maybe that was one of them. Maybe that's not one of them. There's a lot of different things that you cannot use with the Cinema 4D render. It's very powerful because you can take things like, this is a shape layer, this is the reflection, and we're starting to see it, but this is a logo that is a shape layer that Jags extruded and gave it some depth, and he also gave it a bevel, which we can see here on the edge. And like I said, this is quarter resolution, so it's not looking so hot. But that's how he gave it some 3D depth. And then this back wall here, this is I would call it a video wall. It's a dinosaur, it's a T-Rex on a video wall. And the wall is actually, I don't know if you can see my hand here, but it's actually curved. There's curvature to the wall. Okay, so it's not a flat plane sitting back here. There's actually some curvature. And that's also another feature of using the Cinema 4D renderer, is that you can actually take a flat layer and you can bend it, right? You can add curvature to it up to, I don't remember what I'd have to dive in and look at, and I can't stop this render, but you can bend it so far. You can also add segments, so it's a very smooth curve or a very steppy curve. So that's what he did. So this is the logo. This is a 3D floor. The 3D floor has reflection going on in it, as we can see here. It's reflecting the logo. There's 3 lights. There's a rim light, there's a fill light, there's a key light, and they're just kind of positioned around. We'll look at those in a minute. There's an adjustment layer here, and all that's doing is, if I pull up the effect controls, it's expressions for the bevel, the whole bevel depth, and the extrusion. And it's just each of these shape layers here. This is the logo right here. These are all linked to this slider control for the expressions. So he can adjust one slider for bevel, one slider for extrusion, and it's going to affect the entire logo here. So I'm guessing that this project, maybe Jack said what this is, but I'm guessing this project is for like it's some type of animal thing. Maybe it's a museum exhibit, or it's a zoo. I don't know. But the logo here, like I said, it is quarter resolution, but it's a rhino. I think it's a rhino outline inside of this circle. And then obviously the background footage is the T-Rex. And then there's black bars put over the top here. There's a couple adjustment layers. This is add grain and vignetting, and this is curves. Now, in the feedback I initially gave Jags in the community, I told him it'd help to add some grain to this because everything felt very flat. So I don't know if Jags went in and added the grain, or if I just couldn't see it in the Vimeo compression. You know how the compression is whenever you upload something. Sometimes it looks just not so great. So I don't know if he added that after the fact or not, but it is some grain. Like I said, we've got the 3 lights. We've got a null here. This null is controlling the camera. So his camera move, you saw it kind of flies in, and he's controlling that with the null. And we've got the reflective floor here, which is here. And we've got the grunge texture here, and that's from the bonus pack that you guys got in StyleCraft. And then the very last layer here is the dinosaur footage, and it's got some different effects on it. It's got curves, Venetian blinds, hue, saturation, sharpen, glow, so on and so forth. So as this is still previewing, that's how the project was broken down. And I wanted to take it and just kind of give it my spin on how I would improve on this project. Now, this is just my personal taste, and everyone's tastes are different. So I do want to caveat this and say that what I think looks good may not look good to the client, may not look good to you, or it's a free country, so you're allowed to have your opinions of what you think looks good. I'm going to show you what I do here. There's some things I changed. Like, I didn't love how the logo was blue, and the background was kind of this pinkish red, and the floor is red. I don't know if those are the colors that he had to use. I don't know. I chose to change the colors all to more of a blue tint to have everything kind of sit better together. So, like I said, I didn't talk to Jags about the changes I made. If he's here today, this is the first time he's seeing it. If he sees the replay, obviously the first time he's seeing it. But if he was limited to having to use a red floor, a red background, red pinkish background with a blue logo, then that's on the client. But those are just a few things I wanted to caveat. I also thought, so that's one thing you're going to see me do. I'm going to change the colors of this overall. The logo is way too big. Depending on who your client is, clients always want to see their logos so damn big. And this one's just too big. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now. And you can see here's our camera move in. And it comes to a rest. And, you know, the motion's real nice. I love the camera move. It's nice that we see this reflective floor. You know, this footage in the background is nice. The texture's nice. But I just want to show you what I would do to this. And if you see me looking over here to the sides, because I have my notes written down so I remember exactly what I did. So let me put those over here, but let's just get started really quickly here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to show you how you can make this better, okay? And this is my take on it. Again, if I'm not allowed to mess with colors, I mean, so be it, but I'm going to mess with the colors. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to full resolution so you can see it. I'm going to just turn off the black bars so that we're not messing with them. I'm also going to turn off the curves. And the reason I'm turning the curves off is I just found that it was unnecessary. It was just creating too much contrast, I think is what it ends up being. So if we turn that off and it loads in here, you're going to see it's probably going to get brighter. Yeah, so it got brighter overall. So that was with the curves. This is without. I felt like it was unnecessary, so I'll turn that off. The next thing I did is I looked at the rim light, and he has the rim light go. There's an expression on it, but it starts at 640% and then drops down to 285%. And I think there's a wiggle expression. Yeah, so just to give it a little bit of flicker, which was a nice little touch to it. So the next thing I did is I dropped it from a value of 288. I dropped it to 100%. So I really reduced that rim light down, and you're going to see that here as soon as it updates. There we go. So this created the contrast that curves was creating that turned off. So with this being turned down and the curves on, it was way too much contrast. So again, this is with it at 285, 288. This is it just dropped down to 100. Okay. So there's that. I also went in and I noticed that the rim light was not putting off any shadows. So you can see that here, it's not casting any shadows. Because I did notice that these shadows down here are pretty harsh. Okay, and that's something that for me, I don't love harsh shadows unless I'm trying to do something very stylistic, like in terms of ray tracing, which then I'll use. If you saw my ProFlows this week, which was rather hit and miss, I talk about ray tracing shadows. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. So the next light is a fill light, and it's casting shadows, right? So I want to turn up the shadow diffusion. And you know, we haven't talked about 2.5D layers, so if you don't understand any of this stuff, that's okay. I do talk about this a little bit in 3D camera techniques and I think 3D layer techniques. So by default, I typically just push up diffusion to 100 pixels. So I'll do that and watch the shadows here. I don't know if it's this one or this one. One of them's going to change. Okay, so it's the shadows back in here. Now we don't notice so much, but they do change, okay? Next, we're going to go into the key light, and that is these shadows down here. They are casting shadows. We're going to bump up this to 100 pixels as well. So watch these shadows here, okay? They're going to go from being pretty hard to pretty soft. So there we go. So that immediately changed up the look of that, okay? To me, it just looks more professional in the sense that they're just softer, more realistic shadows, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and turn those off or collapse those. Next, we've got the logo here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the adjustment layer and all of these shape layers that make up the logo. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to say pre-compose these. I want these all to go into a logo pre-comp. And PC is typically what I type for pre-comp. I want them to all go into a pre-comp because I want to shrink them all together and make them just a little bit smaller. So when I do that, it's going to throw things off here. So I'll let it go ahead and do its thing. And boom, really ugly. The lights aren't affecting it. And that, I believe, is because I need to turn on collapse transformations. So I'll turn that on and let's see what happens here. So that says, hey, this is a pre-comp, but there are 3D layers inside of this pre-comp that need to be recognized. And you see there that it's now right back to where it started in the original position. With it being a pre-comp like this, it's now easy for me to select everything and just say, hey, I want it to be 80% scale, and it's going to shrink it all. Now, I could have added a null and attached everything to that null. Actually, I couldn't do that because everything, well, actually it was. I could have, thinking out loud here, I could have attached everything to a null, shrunk that null by 80%. I just like having this logo in its own little pre-comp. It really simplifies my composition here by doing that. If I want to go in and change things, of course I can go in here and I can change things inside here. It just kind of keeps it a little bit more tidy. I also, let's see here, I dropped the position here. So P for position, and I dropped it, I think I used the value of 635, so it brings it down closer to the floor here. It's going to drop it just slightly. There we go. So immediately that looks way better. So this logo is now 20% smaller than it was. And it's just not so like in your face, like, hey, look at our logo. You could still, it's still the center of attention. It's just a lot smaller and just more pleasing to the eye to see it like that. Okay. I'm also going to jump down here to the floor, and I am going to actually just pull this up here a little bit. Hit AA, and AA reveals my material options. And I am going to go down here to the reflection, intensity, sharpness, and roll off. Okay. And let me just see where I was at. Where's the floor? 62, 75, and 79. Okay. So I kept the intensity at 62. I dropped the sharpness down to 75. So watch what happens here. Right now it's 100% sharpness, which I don't typically ever go 100% sharpness. It's just not realistic enough. So immediately it got a lot more granular looking, not so perfect. And then on the roll off, I increased this to something like 80. And we're not going to see so much of it here, but the roll off essentially says the further away the reflection is from the actual object, so going down, the less of it you're going to see as it goes. It's not going to be 100% opacity. It's going to be 100%, 80, 70, 60, 40, so on and so forth. So that's helps with that. Next, I changed the color of the floor. Okay. And to do that, all I did was go to the solid settings, and I believe I just sampled something like this and said, let's just make it floor color. So again, I don't know if red has to be used, but I thought the blue looked a lot nicer. That's a little bit dark, but for now I'm going to keep it like that. I like it like that. Next, I turned off the grunge, and I brought the grunge to an outer layer, which we'll do here in just a second. So I'll just turn it off for now. And as a final step, I think inside of this comp, what I did was I opened up actually I hit AA, and it didn't make sense to me that the logo was appearing in the reflection on the floor, but this curved background footage wasn't appearing in the reflection. Typically, if it's a reflective floor, which it is, you're going to see both the logo and the background footage reflect in that floor. So I turned reflection right here, appears in reflections from off to on. And it should, once it updates here, appear down here on the floor. There we go. So immediately, I mean, that's like a wow factor, right? Like that, it just made it look, totally different. The next thing I did was I turned off Venetian blinds because I didn't really understand why Venetian blinds was on for this background. Now there may be a reason for it. I didn't think it was necessary. So I turned it off. And then I also, I believe I turned off, so that really brightened up the image. I turned off glow as well. And we're going to add glow at the end to everything, okay? Because I didn't quite understand why the background would be glowy, but the logo is not glowy. I mean, there are times when that will happen, but for this, it just made more sense that everything would kind of glow together. And then, what was the other thing I did here? Was it... Let me double check here. I changed the color. Was it hue and saturation? I changed the color. I didn't write this one down. But let me solo this one. I think I colorized the background so it's a little bit more in the blue tint versus the pinkish one it's in now. There's a little more purple. Maybe somewhere in here. And then I'll unsolo this. And let's see how this looks. Hopefully you guys are leaving me. I can't see your comments or your questions. Hopefully you guys are leaving me some. Yeah, so that wasn't the actual color of blue I used, but that looks pretty good. It works for me. So now I'm going to select the grunge. I'm going to actually go up here to the top. I'm going to say I need the box, and I need this. That's the letterbox, and I need the grunge texture. I'm going to copy those, and I am going to take this. I'm going to drop it into a new composition, and for this composition, I'm going to paste the letterbox over the top. I'm also going to use the grunge layer over the top. And I believe for this grunge layer, I changed it now from add to overlay. But let's just see how it looks with add. And let's back it. I think we were at 6 seconds. There we are. So there's add. I thought it looked a little bit more interesting on overlay mode. It kind of comes and goes here. So like this particular frame, you're seeing a little bit more of the dark on the frame, I believe. So if I move to like 5 seconds, let's see how this looks. Any day now. Come on. Well, maybe that one's not gonna look so good. So we'll go back to add. It is interesting to see that texture like that right there. And then let me check my notes here. Yeah, so then on this very final comp here, what I did was, the reason I did this is so I could apply a glow effect to all of this without affecting the grunge or the bars. So I went to stylize, glow, and typically I would use like a sapphire glow or a red giant glow. I know a lot of you guys don't have those, so I'm just using the basic glow inside of After Effects. And the reason I use those glows is because they're much quicker to work with, and I can get much more visually pleasing results to me much quicker versus playing around with the glows that are built into After Effects. I do wish they would improve their glow. Maybe one day they will. But I turned the threshold down to 30%. I expanded the radius to 210%. And I made the intensity really low, 0.11. And then I think I duplicated it. And on this one, I made the threshold 13%. I made the radius really high, 575. And I made the intensity 0.06. And that's what I had. And maybe this is why I turned it from add to overlay. Yeah, it just kind of gave it a nice little feeling there. I like that. So if I preview this at full res, it's going to take forever. So maybe I'll just go to a quarter here. But anyways, so, you know, same basic camera move, just changing things like colors, reducing size of the logo, reducing intensity of the lights, putting that footage as we see here in the floor, really brought the footage and the logo into the same world, which was really important for this concept, because just seeing the logo in the floor and not the footage, it created a separation between the two of them. It was like the logo lived in this world and the footage is almost like it was just slapped in the back, right? It lived in a separate world. And you really want to make sure that all of your elements really live in the same world, whether or not it's a realistic world or not. You know, it can be, I'm trying to think of a good example. This is more of a realistic world. Like it's an actual room, right? But even if we were living in a very highly stylized world, maybe it's something that doesn't really exist, right? So this is a room that could exist. If we were working in motion design with something that didn't really exist, like let's say it's a, I don't know, but even if it doesn't truly exist, you still need these elements to feel like they could live together, right? And that's all we're trying to do. I see it happen all the time in motion design where designers will just kind of drop things in over the top and say, well, hey, look at this awesome thing, when they don't look like they even live together. So Jags, you did a really nice job on this. These are just some tweaks that I would do personally to change it up and make it look a little bit better. So you could always go further with this. You could always go less. So that is what I've got for you for Jags project. Hopefully it made an impression on you guys of how you can maybe improve your projects. And I'll go ahead and just play it back here. So there you go. I probably would leave the texture at overlay because this is a little bit too much of texture, right? I'd probably drop the actually the transparency is dropped down. Yeah, screen's definitely too much. So overlay is where it's at now, but yeah, that's what I got for you. So with that being said, I am going to jump back to me. And before I do this, let me save this project as, so I don't write over it here. Motion Science 2. Hang on here, I'll look at your stuff in just a second here. Let me save this, make sure I've got it in the right place. Come on. There we go. Actually, let me pull this up and show you guys something really fast here. So hopefully you can see my screen again. So just to show you, this was Jags at 6 seconds in. Mine's at 6 seconds. So this was Jags, and this is what I did differently at 6. So there's 6. And like I said, I'm not dissing on you, Jags. I think you did an awesome job. Just trying to show you how I would improve it a little bit. So there you go. You guys always amaze me with what you can do. And you're only going to get better, which is so awesome to see. Okay, so let's see what your comments and questions are. It looks like we've got quite a few here. I think you did. Let me switch those over here. Jags is one of Phil's guys in the buddy. Awesome. So Jags is a good, I'm sure he's a good buddy to have in your group. So Phil said, what does the sunlight button do exactly? The button next to the mole button. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. The sunlight button next to the mole button. Oh, I know. So you're talking about, okay, so I use them when the pre-comp isn't 3D inside, but I actually don't know what it does. It does reveal what's inside of a pre-comp. Is that it, or are there other purposes? So, Phil, that's a great question. Hi, Larkin. Glad to have you here. Phil, that was a great question. So back when they brought in, I'm going to go ahead and start bringing something in here as I'm talking to you. But back when After Effects was in its infancy, not too far into its life cycle, It had, of course, now I'm looking for a file and I can't find it. Where are you at? Downloads. It's hard for me to talk and look for this at the same time. Nope. Just trying to find any vector file, and of course I can't find one because I just deleted like a lot of stuff off my computer. Here, what is this? This might work. It's probably some weird vector file. Oh yeah. Okay, so let me show you. So back in the day, switch back to screen here. Back in the day, when we would bring, so if I created a new composition, this is actually before even HD was around, just SD stuff. If we were to bring in like a vector file like this, if we scaled it up, like for whatever reason we had to scale it way up, you can see here, especially on this text, it looks like crap, right? I mean, like you can't, no, we'll do that, scale, anything above 100%, it just starts to look like crap. Well, they introduced collapse transformations like this so you can enable it, and it makes everything crystal clear, right? With vector layers only. So this is, and it's continually rasterized is what it used to be called. Now it's just, I think they kind of switched the names around. It's got several names, but this is how vector layers used to come in, scaled over 100%. Then they introduced in version 5 or 6 or something, this button, which was a godsend, and it continually rasterizes your vector graphics so they always look crystal clear no matter what scale they're at. I mean, here I am at, I'm scaled up to 4,000%, 4,520%. Continually rasterize was a godsend. So that was the initial thing, the initial reason it came about. And then when they introduced 3D features as well, that was another feature that came in, is that you could collapse your transformations inside of a pre-comp and things would still be recognized, placements of 3D objects and things like that. And it's got a few other functions to it as well, but those are the two main ones. Let's see. So Phil says I liked it better with the blue color. Cool. It does kind of look like underwater, and like I said, I just took the blue off of the logo because I assumed that the logo was supposed to be blue. So if it was supposed to be, you know, more in the red tones, like maybe I would have gone red. You could do it with any color, and you don't, you know, that was just I didn't want to spend hours and hours and hours on Jag's project trying to say like, here's what I would do. There are ways that you can incorporate, you know, the blues and the reds. One of would have been to reduce the saturation on the red. It was way too saturated. So maybe like a more muted red for a floor, or it was just too much with the floor and the background being like the pink. They were so saturated, and then you had this logo in the middle. So there are ways to incorporate other colors and not make it look like it's underwater. Would it be still cool if you use red color to the logo as the background used to be with fire elements, so it could be look like, I don't. Yes, you could do that. Like I said, I don't know what Jag's requirements were from his friend or his client. So, you know, I assume the logo was supposed to be blue. But, you know, it just all depends on your client. So when you guys progress through StyleCraft, when you hit about the halfway mark, you're going to go into these projects that are client driven. And I've talked a little bit about this, but they're spec clients. They're not real clients, but you're going to find out that a client will tell you, if you haven't already done with this. I know a lot of you work for post houses, or your editors, or you have clients in this realm. Some of you don't. But a client will come to you with specifics like, you know, hey, our logo, this is the brand of our logo. It's got to be blue. But we're doing this exhibition with a dinosaur that has to be red, right? And so you have to somehow blend the two of those together. So, or they could come to you and say, hey, our logo's got to be blue. There's a dinosaur footage, but you can do whatever the hell you want with it. So it's wide open. So it just depends on what your requirements are for the job. Yeah, vector layers, Phil. So there was also a time, yeah, when vector layers weren't even really, I don't know if they were always part of After Effects. I feel like at the very beginning they weren't. I started in version 3.0, which was, I don't think there was a 1 or 2.0. That's when it was called COSA. And I don't remember if vectors were part of that early version or not. I want to say they weren't. And then they brought vectors in, and that kind of changed everything up. It used to just be like you could mess with QuickTime movies and like Photoshop files or PNGs or JPEGs. After Effects has changed a lot since then, but it also hasn't changed a whole lot in other ways. So there's an app coming out called Calvary that I follow on Instagram that's pretty cool. They're trying to be like a competition for After Effects. And they do a lot of procedural animation type of work. The stuff that they're showing off, it's really cool. But who knows? I mean, there's no real competitor for After Effects, right? After Effects is kind of the king. So I guess if it's working, why would you change it? I would like to see some more 3D capabilities, though, within After Effects. Okay, so we're 41 minutes into our call. Who else has got a question? For those of you that showed up late, just to let you know, the live critique is next Wednesday, same time, 1 o'clock. And that's where I'm going to critique everyone's work. Usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half. And then a Q&A call will be the week after. So we actually have 3 weeks in a row of calls. Phil said the limited lecture on the Motion Science website a few days ago is gone. Would it come back? It's gone. You're talking about the freebie I had up there. I'm assuming the idea to execution, that is gone. That was around for people just to come in and see what Motion Science is about. I will tell you, Phil, that is taken, it's not the same lesson, but you learn that in Stylecraft a little bit later on. Right before we get into the client briefs and the client projects you start working on, that's what happens is you learn how to get from idea to execution based on a client brief. So it actually goes in much more detail than what you saw in that video. So Tom says, on the live critique calls, are there specific bits of work to submit for it, or is it just any assignment we've been working on? So Tom, it's changed up a little bit this time around because we are in a new beta community. We were, before you guys came in, we were all in Facebook. And in Facebook, what would happen is everyone would post their videos or their still designs, and it looked like crap. And we had no control over the quality of what was posted. Plus, it was in Facebook, and there's some people not on Facebook, and some people wanted to get away from Facebook, including myself. So that's why this community was built. The work looks a lot better. So in the past, long story short, what we would do is I would have you guys send me your files through WeTransfer, and I would pull those files up in QuickTime and go through them. What I've been doing, I've done once, this will be the second time trying this, is that I'm just going to play off of your Vimeo or YouTube links inside the community. I'll probably go full screen with them. And there is a way, specifically in Vimeo, I'm not sure about YouTube yet, where I can go frame by frame in Vimeo when I play back. So we're just going to try that for now for this first live call. So whatever you've posted in finished exercises is what I am going to critique. So if you have stuff that you've been posting in work in progress, there may be a few pieces in there I critique just because I want to specifically talk about them. But for the most part, I'm going to try and stick with finished exercises. If your work is under that topic, that is what will be critiqued. It does not have to be an assigned exercise. I do prefer to keep the live critique calls to assigned exercises so that we can only talk about those. I've said in the past, if you have work that you've done for clients, like what Jags just did, you're welcome to post that stuff in work in progress. And I'm happy to give critiques, feedback on that in the community. And if we, it just depends on the week. When Stylecraft starts, there's usually so much homework that comes in, so many exercises that come in, that it's good for me just to get through those in an hour to hour and a half. So I don't want to really add the extra outside work into that if possible. I try to always stay as flexible as possible for you guys, because, you know, if something is very important to you, you know, go ahead and submit it. You know, I'll do my best to cover it if you're in a jam or whatever. So hopefully that answers that question. It's a long answer, but Larkin says, I have a toddler. Either I'll make it or not. If you don't make it, watch the replay, Larkin. I've got a toddler too. I've got a toddler who's 5. How old's your child, Larkin? My life's crazy. I've got a 5-year-old. I've got a 16-year-old. I've got a 20-year-old, and I've got a 21-year-old. The 5-year-old was a happy accident. Phil says, did you say 1 o'clock next Wednesday, not 12? Yeah. So, okay. For those of you that don't know, most of you do know, I moved recently to Florida from the Midwest in America. So I was on the Central Standard Time. So it's still the same time because I was always saying 12 o'clock Central. It's just 1 o'clock Eastern now is what I'm starting to get in the mode of saying. The time is always the same. It's always Wednesdays, 12 noon, 1 Eastern. I'm always going to include that time zone converter because so many of you live in other parts of the world. I want to make sure everyone can be on here. So it's still the same time. I just happen to be saying it differently. Tom says, it sounds good. Thanks. Cool. Oh, your son is 18 months. That is definitely a handful. I don't know how people have more than one either. I feel like I have 2 different families. I have 2, the 21 and 20-year-old are boys, and the 16-year-old is a girl. And I don't know, man. Like, that time flew by. It's crazy. It can be very challenging being a freelancer or running your own company with kids too. Yes, Phil. 2 a.m. on Thursday would still be the same time. Jeez, man. So is it 2 a.m. where you're at right now? I forgot that you're in South Korea. That's crazy. I applaud you if you're showing up at 2 a.m. for these calls. Do remember they're always recorded. So if you miss one, that's okay. But wow. Oh my gosh. Big hand for Phil. So sleepy, I bet you are. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to wrap this up unless you guys have any more questions for me. Hopefully you got some good tips out of that project I showed you. And we'll probably have some more of those. I do those periodically on these calls. So otherwise, does anyone have any questions on the exercises you were going through, your assignments, anything confusing or anything like that you want me to answer really quickly for you? Phil says that was awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, cool, Larkin. Yeah, if you missed the first part where I go over Jag's project, definitely check it out. It's like a lesson in itself. Mini lesson in itself. So, okay, guys, cool. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you guys all being here. It's always exciting to see who shows up for these calls and who has something to say. As always, if you ever have a question in between these calls, feel free to post in the community. That's what it's for. Hopefully you guys are getting something out of your buddy groups as well. So you guys are all in your buddy groups now who asked to be in one. Hopefully those are working out for you. And cool. I guess with that being said, everyone have a awesome week. Get your work in. One more point. Get your work into the community by Tuesday of next week if you want to see it in the live critique call. I need to have it by Tuesday, end of day, so that I have time to review that work before I jump on the calls. I do like to have a little bit of time to make sure that I know exactly what I want to say about a particular video and get the most out of it. So with that being said, have a awesome week. Appreciate you guys all being here. I will talk to you all real soon. Have a great day.